Americans lead the way to victory in Madrid. Liverpool are on top of both Europe and the Premier League, and we take a closer look at one of America's rising soccer cities. That and much more here on Wednesday's Morning Kick Around. Hello and welcome into Morning Kick Around, where we cover the world's favorite game from the world's most confused country. Coming to you live on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings. I'm Robert Kerr. Happy to be joined by my partner, Mr. Jason Davis. Hello.
Hello, Robert. How are you today? How are you feeling? It's just a totally normal Wednesday for us here, talking about soccer as we like to do. That's how I feel right now. I don't know how you feel.
We are gonna do some soccer rings and try to stay as focused on that. I'd ask how you doing with the news of the day. How are things in Puerto Rico on your vacation?
Oh, vacation. I'm working. I'm here with you. I'm doing my normal thing, so it's not really vacation. It's more like let the grandparents deal with the 3-year-old for just a little while. But yeah, Puerto Rico's beautiful. It's a beautiful place. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise, Robert. It's fantastic.
I'd say my biggest news of the day is the stray cat we adopted last week
Ooh.
has now officially been let into the house. And so I'm kind of, if you hear any strange noises in the background, that's my Chihuahua and the cat getting to know each other. So we all
Making a
have our own.
menagerie.
Yeah, we all
Wow,
have,
a whole situation over there.
yeah, we all have our own personal struggles, right? But speaking of which, we gotta get going on the path to 500 subscribers. We are just over the 350 mark. 500 is the big next milestone for us to hit. So tell your friends, tell your families, tell your enemies to click the button on subscribe on the Morning Kick Around YouTube channel, and find us on social media, M Kick Around on X and Instagram. Or be like Nate, write us an email at morningkickaround@gmail.com.
Yeah, get your Gmail on, as they say.
You look ready. I'm ready. Let's hit today's highlights with long balls. Here we go. Long ball number one for Wednesday here. Americans led the way to AC Milan's historic win in Madrid. Did you get to see that one?
Absolutely, yeah. Watched all of that game here in Puerto Rico, and it was a couple of things. It was Madrid. Let's just say this: Madrid not being their normal selves, right? Whether it's what happened against Barcelona, whether it's the Vinny Jr. distraction with the Ballon d'Or, whether it's something else that is broken right now in Madrid, that is not the team you expect to see in their own building in this competition, which they own. But it is also worth saying that Paulo Fonseca had a plan. Milan executed their plan fairly well. They limited Madrid. There were opportunities. Obviously, Vinny Jr. won himself a penalty. A little soft. I don't know how you feel about that, Robert. It was tissue paper a little bit, but he got away with it. A couple of times he got isolated and was able to do his Vinny thing from that left wing. They got Jude Bellingham into the channel a couple of times, and he wasn't really able to pull anything off. But Milan took their chances. They did what was necessary. A set piece, assist for our man Christian Pulisic. They obviously had the Morata goal, which comes off a sequence that starts with Pulisic, putting Leao in a position to take a shot. We end up with Leao finally kind of making it all work when he got free up that left-hand side and cut it back for Reinders to put the dagger in. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I have not yet mentioned sort of the shadow hero of that game for Milan, Yunus Musa, playing not out of position, because I'm not sure if we know what Yunus's actual position is, whether it's with Milan or with the U.S. men's national team. The man was kind of playing a hybrid wingback, slipped into midfield a couple times. They even leaked him out and tried to get Magnan to find him with a long ball up the field, very route one at one point. I mean, he was doing a lot of things, and I think he did very well against Bellingham, and I think he pocketed Vinny Jr. a couple times.
Yeah, that's wild. He did put together an incredible performance. I'd say generally midfield would be where I'd place Yunus Musa. And what a moment for both of these teams. I mean, Milan having their own troubles, some rumblings about the Fonseca, the coach, benching Leao, and they've had some middling results. But on the other side, Madrid back-to-back home losses. I mean, they lost to Barcelona, and then they lose here to Milan. Um, Unexpected to say the least. And now both teams, Milan and Madrid, tied in the Champions League with 6 points after 4 games, which is, I don't think anyone would have saw those teams level.
Yeah, we're halfway through this league phase, new format for the Champions League. So we kind of have a sense, but I think so many more things can change. And I do think Milan had a pretty rough front end in terms of their schedule, their fixture list in this league phase. Obviously Real Madrid did the thing against Dortmund at home that wasn't that long ago. Let's not forget that, Robert. It wasn't that long ago that Madrid did that comeback against Dortmund and just romped them in the second half. So things can change. I expect both these teams to be in play for the round of 16, but we do have a little ways to go before we get there.
That Real Madrid comeback did seem inevitable. It was 2-1, first half injury time. Mbappe, who had a lot of chances, but I don't think he scored. But yeah, right before the halftime break, he gets in on goal. There's an incredible save, one of many incredible saves by the Milan goalkeeper. And you thought that was the comeback. That would have made it 2-2 at the break. And then later on in the game, I think around 80, the Rudiger, Antonio Rudiger's, disallowed goal would have made it 3-2 with 10 minutes to go. And that would have followed the typical Champions League Real Madrid script, right?
Look, I will say I'm not always a fan. I'm not always the biggest backer or the booster of VAR out there, but I will say that because of the way the offside works in particular, the technology around offside calls, that's a moment when in the past Real Madrid's going to get some home cooking, right? That's not going to be taken off the Rudiger goal. But because there is technology to go back and check, they can say this is an offside goal, take it off the board. It may have been the difference between Real Madrid being able to execute a comeback and Milan winning the game the way that they did. And I think it was deserved. For as much as I'm saying that Real Madrid was not good on the day, they weren't themselves, that there were lots of poor performances across the field from them. I do think Milan deserved that victory. They're not great. I'm still not sold on this team doing much in Serie A over the course of an entire season, or I'm not sure I have them as a semi-finalist in the Champions League or anything like that. But on that day, when they needed to, they did something that not a lot of teams can do, which is go to the Bernabeu and win.
Another big result on Tuesday afternoon in the Champions League. We'll switch over to long ball number 2. We'll do an elevated diagonal through ball. We'll call this one. Liverpool go top of the Champions League with a 4-0 win over former hero Xabi Alonso's Leverkusen.
Yeah, this was comprehensive. I mean, I know you're thrilled about this, Rob. This is big. And this is the kind of performance that gives people a real sense that Liverpool can win this whole competition. Now, I don't think Leverkusen is the same as they were last year. The magic is gone. They were maybe just as risky with some of the way that they played as last year as they are this year. But last year they would find a way through, except in that Europa League final when Adama Lukman went off for Atalanta and won in Dublin. It kind of felt like the Leverkusen push was going to be inevitable. They would find the 90th minute goal to equalize or to win. That did not happen because in that second half, Liverpool just turned it on and it clicked for them because Leverkusen was pretty good in that first half, Rob. It was pretty even, if maybe not shaded Leverkusen's way, but Liverpool has the weapons. Arne Slot seems to have solidified Liverpool a little bit more defensively, but they still have so much depth in that front 3, that front 6. Kind of tough.
I can't say enough about Schlott and the job he's done here in the first few months of his era at Liverpool. The pattern of it being a very tight game for a lot of it is a pattern we're seeing with this Liverpool side at the weekend against Brighton. Very tight. And then I think Schlott has made them very opportunistic when the opponent is there for the taking. They are punishing. I mean, here in yesterday's game against Leverkusen, 0-0, and then there's 2 goals in 2 minutes, and then 4 goals over in 30 minutes. It was even, and then once they kind of cracked the egg, it all came pouring out.
Yeah, I think for Leverkusen, the problem with that performance, right? I mean, this is not a team that's perennially in the Champions League, right? So you can kind of give them a pass. And Xabi Alonso is still a young coach. So it's not like you can hold them to an incredible standard because it's just not a lot of history to lean on. But if we're talking about the story of this Champions League, giving up those extra goals, right? If they lose 2-0 at Anfield, you go, okay, they lost 2-0 at Anfield. They lost to a very good team, first place in the Premier League. No skin off their nose. But you give up those extra goals, and now you're talking about goal difference being a problem down the line for Leverkusen in the Champions League, in seeding, in whether or not you're top 8 and you get into the round of 16 directly, or if you have to play the extra series of games, the extra tie against somebody in that 9 through 24 groups. I mean, those are the things that we'll look back and go, man, if Leverkusen could have just held Liverpool to 2, it could be the difference between progressing in this thing and not.
Some absolutely beautiful goals yesterday. Before we move along from Champions League action today, actually, let's stay on yesterday. Manchester City downed by Manchester United's next man up.
Oh, you had to do it that way. I also want to talk about another American performance before we move on from the Champions League. So put a pin in that. But yes, I mean, Ruben Amorim, or however you're supposed to say it. I know that the English are going to say Ruben Amorim, except with an accent that I'm not doing right now.
Amorim.
Yeah, great showing for Sporting. Again, it feels like a little bit of self-fulfilling prophecy for Pep, who can't stop talking about the injury problems that he's got. Now, they're real. I'm not saying they're not real injury problems, but you are constantly talking about, we got so many injury problems. I would be surprised if X, Y, or Z happens. It's very strange to hear him talk so negatively about his team right now. Now, that's building in some excuses when the results don't go your way, but it's also sending a message to your team, hey, we really can't do this right now. This is really too tough for us. So they have the bad result on the weekend. They get knocked out of the League Cup a week ago, and now here they are losing in the Champions League to Sporting. Not just losing, but losing in that manner. And of course, the subplot here, Robert, is with Amorim going to Old Trafford in a couple weeks' time. Of course, Victor Gyökeres is now linked to Manchester United as a potential goal-scoring option. Can't happen now. Not sure it'll happen in January, but that's going to be one of the stories around this.
I mean, that would be part of the playbook. I mean, Erik ten Hag did similar. He brought a lot of Ajax players over.
How'd that work out for them? How did that work out?
But I mean, coaches have their favorites that follow them from job to job. I mean, that's not out of bounds really in world football. But so if Amorim were to bring some players, he'd be the one, right?
Yeah, Gyökeres would be the one. I am sort of fascinated by the Gyökeres situation because he's 26 years old. You're not buying him on the promise of maybe selling him down the line. And you could argue, I mean, look, he could score goals into his 30s. It's certainly possible. But what kind of timeline are you looking at if you are United's new leadership? And you're like, okay, well, how much is it going to take for us to get Gyökeres out of Sporting? Probably at least 50 mil. I'm not sure, but I mean, there's always the Manchester United tax. And so you wonder if it's worth it after all the money they spent. They're not Chelsea, but they were second to Chelsea in terms of the amount of money they spent, and they're not getting any return out of it or nothing significant. I mean, you could argue about Onana. We definitely know Anthony's a bust. There's several other players in that group that you're just like, whoa, what happened here? Do you really want to replicate that by going and getting Amorim and then asking him to bring along his Swedish striker, who's going to cost you some money and doesn't have quite the same, length of promise in front of him? He's ready. He's fully baked at this point, Victor Gyökeres. Now he's scoring tons of goals. I think it's 23 goals on the year or something stupid like that. It's November. He's got 23 goals. He scores a stupid amount of goals, but he is the finished product. He's not going to get better from here. So you better be sure that it translates from the Portuguese league to the Premier League.
In my Liverpool voice, I'd say I'm happy for them to continue making the same sort of decisions over there on the red part of Manchester. Got
Okay.
another?
Yeah, no, let's throw in recognition for Malik Tillman and what he did for PSV Eindhoven yesterday. Threw for a touchdown, ran for a touchdown. I'm going to keep using this joke because he had a throw in that ended up being an assist, scored a goal of his own, actually had a second assist, could have scored again, I think. So a good day for PSV Eindhoven in that victory in the Champions League. Maybe not the marquee game and maybe not a game that you're like, oh, this is some sort of massive achievement. And what is PSV Eindhoven's ceiling going to be in this competition? Those questions are still out there. But if we're just taking the game for what it was, and it's, Spanish opposition, say what you want about Girona and who they are and how many players they lost from last year, but that's still Spanish opposition, and PSV looked very good in that game.
Full slate of games here on Wednesday afternoon as well. Aston Villa, a name that we didn't expect to be saying in this sentence, with a multi-goal win. I think if they have a 3 or 4 goal win, will bounce back to the top of Champions League. Liverpool on top now. Liverpool facing Brugge this afternoon with a chance to return to the summit. Would you have thought that Emery and co would do that? An underrated coach, Emery, right?
Oh, absolutely. And last season was excellent. Now, did I think maybe they were going to have a Newcastle-like experience? Yeah, sure. I think that was kind of always possible. But Emery is a very good coach, and they know how they want to play. And I think, that if they do end up back atop the table with a 3-goal or more win today, because that's what it will take to either draw level with Liverpool on goal difference or jump ahead of Liverpool on goal difference, it'll be well deserved. I mean, it'll be well deserved. And I think it's a good story. And I think it is encouraging if you're a football fan, if you're a fan of this game right now, to see Villa be able to come up the way they have, because we're living in a world where your greatest hope, if you're not already established as one of the big 4 or 5 teams in the Premier League, your greatest hope is, please, oil-rich country, come and buy us. Like that's literally the way that people think now in terms of, can we ever win anything? Can we actually win meaningful trophies? And that's not where Villa is. Now, I'm not saying that their ownership is fundamentally better than anybody else's, but there hasn't had to have been that kind of like, oh, the Qataris or the Emiratis or the Saudis or the whoever is buying us, Omanis. I mean, good for Villa to be able to do it this way.
Long ball number 3 coming back stateside. The 2024 MLS salaries were released this week, and there were some interesting things to check out. Obviously we know who the top salary getter is, one Lionel Messi, but there's some surprising names, and the compensation doesn't always reflect the impact on the field of these players. There are, I'd say what stuck out to me most was down in Inter Miami, not Messi, but helpers Suarez and Jordi Alba on very, surprisingly low salaries here in 2020.
Yeah, they're giving Miami the "we want to play with Leo" discount is what they're doing, and we want to live in Miami discount. And who knows? Those guys could be clocking a little extra on the side from, Leo's company or something. Hey, come play with me. I'll throw in a couple of extra mil for you. Who knows? I mean, all that stuff. I don't know. Like Miami's already been in trouble for salary cap violations. So you all have to take all of this with a grain of salt. Like, is it real? Actually, we do have the player top 10 and top 20. So this is, as you mentioned, Lionel Messi, 20 million guaranteed compensation per the MLSPA. Then Insigne, how much of that is wasted? That's just burning cash up there in Canada, and they've got what they got, like their money is on par with ours. We can't even make that joke anymore. That Canadian money is worth less than American dollars. Whatever, they're burning cash up there. Maybe it's winter's coming, got to keep warm. Burn your Lorenzo Insigne money. Busquets is getting paid. Shaqiri, okay, well, he's gone, so I don't know exactly how that works anymore. Driussi, Wow, tumultuous season. I mean, I think he earned a raise and was nearly an MVP, but that is not looking great. Which Bernadeschi again, Toronto just throwing more cash into the oil drum to burn. Forsberg, worth it? So, I mean, look, Red Bull fans would be like, that's completely worth it. Look at where we are. We just beat the champs. Hector Herrera.
Would you say that was mixed?
He's
mixed to bad.
He's helped Houston be relevant and make the playoffs, and that matters. But obviously, we have a bad taste in our mouth. Well, he doesn't have any taste in his mouth. He's spat out the bad taste, but we have a bad taste in our mouth from what he did with his mouth because Ache spit and got sent off against Seattle, and now they're done. Hani Mukhtar, former MVP in this league. Carlos Hill, former MVP in this league. Obviously, terrible year for New England. See, Benteke, worth it. Muriel, not so much. Luciano Acosta, probably underpaid based on what he means to Cincinnati and where he is on this. Denis Bouanga, absolutely underpaid. Pulido, Pookie, got Minnesota United. They're in the playoffs. They're looking good. They advanced past RSL. Hugo Kuipers, Walker Zimmerman, Diego Rossi, Joseph Painsil. I mean, it is. Ricky Puig isn't on this list. Who else is missing from this list that you might expect to see?
I would say, obviously one of the biggest contributors was another Columbus Crew player not listed there. Cucho Hernandez has to be listed as, one of the biggest values. I believe he was getting compensated in the range of 2.5 mil a year. So, definitely value for money there in Columbus. Like we said earlier, Suarez and Alba around 1.5. And this asks the question, so which one of those guys gets an upgraded contract, and can they keep both of them?
Well, I don't know. I mean, what if Neymar's coming? You got to keep those DP slots open because Neymar might be, although Neymar just got hurt again 2 weeks back from his ACL and he got hurt again. I don't know how bad that is. I think that was in an Asian Champions League match over there in Saudi Arabia. I don't know. We talked about Mo Salah going to the Red Bulls as a possibility. We're just throwing things out. It's just kind of you're just spitballing. You're just spitballing out here. And we had some comments, people taking issue with the idea of Mo Salah ending up in New Jersey. Why would he go to New Jersey? Why would he play in MLS? Bleep wages in Major League Soccer. Compared to the Saudi Pro League, yeah, those are not the same kind of wages, of course. And Mo Salah is probably not getting 20 mil as good as he's been, like Lionel Messi. But sometimes players, they might want to have the American experience. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if today they want to have it, after some things that have recently happened. They could be changing their minds. I have no idea. I think it's possible. But then again, Major League Soccer, we know, is not going to compete with the richest leagues. That's, mainly the Premier League. But you could throw out some of the other top leagues. And they're not going to compete, especially down the roster, with a league like the Saudi Pro League or the Bundesliga or some of these other competitions. And, but you do need to spend a little bit. The premium is there to get players to choose to play in a league that is not rated among the best on the planet. It doesn't have access to the UEFA Champions League. So, it's kind of this mixed bag.
While we were, admittedly daydreaming and speculating about the Mo Salah New York Red Bulls thing, there is a thread where you could see it being possible. In my mind, Red Bull is kind of a sleeping commercial giant sitting in the league. And
sleeping? Oh, you mean sleeping in Major League Soccer because they have okay.
Yeah. Right. In the MLS context, they're kind of a sleeping giant. And then while maybe Red Bulls doesn't have the ability to offer that huge 20 million, from the team, they do have that corporate link to, maybe add incentive similar to Messi got, some deals looped in with his contract with Adidas and then with the league itself with the season pass and Apple, I imagine the Red Bull company has enough resources and outlets to link Mo Salah hypothetically into some sort of a sweetened deal with the corporate connection and, the whole personal connection with Jurgen Klopp and him being there. So maybe that conversation is a little easier and maybe there's some sort of stock options or some ownership stake in one of the many, franchises that Red Bull runs.
Maybe they'll give him a Flugtag. Isn't that a thing? Isn't that where they fly the planes off the the cliff or something. I don't know what Red Bull's doing
Yeah,
anymore.
part of sweetening the deal, they will waive the entry fee to the Flutog for Mo Salah.
There you go. Maybe they'll let him drive the F1 car for a little while. Maybe he just gets a couple laps in the F1 car. I think that might be worth it. I don't know if Mo Salah's a big F1 guy, but it seems like most people are if you're not American. So throw that in there.
So on that list, some of the best values for money, not even on that list, Cucho Hernandez at Columbus, Ricky Puig in Galaxy. Who else would you say was definitely a value for money now that we have a little bit more context seeing these MLS salary numbers?
I mean, I'm always more fascinated by the guys who are absolutely a waste of money, but because sometimes that value element is, the context is kind of murky. Sometimes guys come in and they're not highly rated and they get a deal and then they have a good season. You're like, wow, they're so underpaid. It was like, well, no, they were worth that when they arrived. And now maybe they're worth more, but that's how contracts work. When you go back into the negotiating room, you say, hey, I want more. And you have to convince the team, and the team has to do their spreadsheets and check out their budgets and look at the rules and look at what they have to spend and make those decisions. And sometimes, obviously sometimes that ends up with a disagreement that can break a relationship. I mean, look at what's happened in Portland with Evander, who's not on that list, right? Not on the top 20. Evander, who had an MVP caliber season and then got real salty about the way that the team was handling his contract negotiations, which I do think he had some demands that didn't make a lot of sense to me, but he was salty, and it kind of upended the entire Timbers season with that loss against Vancouver in the wildcard round.
So to narrow it down for worst picks, we want to dig in the lower ends, the worst values. You noted that maybe Xherdan Shaqiri, a bad one for.
He's not even playing for Chicago anymore. I think clearly that was a waste.
Driussi in Austin, obviously, like he, previously overachieved on smaller earnings and then earned his payday. But, the one that really glows for bad decision making, and maybe you shouldn't, kind of base your big money transfers on light internet Googling of Transfer Market and Football Manager. In bright lights, worst contracts has to be the Italian duo of Toronto FC.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. They're not like the Italians from Kicking and Screaming who were quite good for Will Ferrell's team and get the ball to the Italians. This case, you don't want those Italians. They're vaping, they're fighting with each other, they're getting people fired. Just an absolute whiff from Toronto FC.
And in general, what do you think of this? This is an annual thing. The MLS salaries are released. They are mostly accurate, but obviously there's some stuff that's hidden in the margins, and then you don't know about, outside corporate sponsorships and tie-ins they might have. But would you like to see maybe the foreign leagues kind of being more public and open about what the players are earning?
Well, I mean, this is not the league, right? This is the Players Association, and they're doing it. They've long done it, and it's kind of just become standard for them, in part to publicize the most underpaid players in MLS, to drive up pressure on the league to do better with its salaries. It's like, hey, you're using this labor to sell soccer in America, and you're paying these guys $23,000 a year. Now, we've gotten way past that point. That's not a thing as much as it used to be. I remember famously Stu Holden was on a contract that was like $14,000 a year when he started in Major League Soccer. That's nothing, especially with the inflation these days. All right, I'm sorry, I'm not going to make jokes about that, but we are not there. The bottom end has risen, but it is still, I guess, a necessary tool for the MLSPA. Would I like to know exactly what players are making around? Sure, why not? Why not? Why wouldn't I want to know exactly what they're making around the world and have it be more public? I mean, we do hear these things. They are reported. Of course, I always have to do the math because the English, especially, Robert, and I'm putting this on you. This is your fault. They always do weekly wages instead of annual wages. And we're always like, okay, all right, he's on 80,000 pounds a week. Multiply that by, we're going to carry the 4. And I don't know. I don't know sometimes. I don't know math. No matter.
I'll never forget the first time I heard it expressed that way. I think when it was like Gerard making 200,000 pounds a week, and my hair literally just like blew back in the wind there. And when I was sitting inside, my hair blew back, But be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, guys. Morning Kick Around, hit that button. Working towards that goal of 500. We're getting about 75 or so a week, and we got to pump those numbers up. Tell your friends, family, and foes. Morning Kick Around on YouTube. We're going to catch our breath and come right back with a special episode of Get to Know Your District. On today's installment of Get to Know Your District, we're going to take a look at the Motor City. Like many American cities, Detroit has a fragmented soccer history where amateur teams and leagues of mostly immigrant communities have come and gone. The Detroit Cougars for a couple seasons in the 1960s. Then the Detroit Express played a couple more years in the North American Soccer League in the late 70s. And then about a generation came past with not a lot of soccer outside of indoor stuff. But Detroit's next biggest soccer moment was being a host city for World Cup 1994, where crowds of 80,000 plus packed into the Pontiac Silverdome. I know your partner in the afternoon likes to talk about what he did in the Silverdome, Jason. And 2012 came Detroit City FC, who have gone from DIY amateurs to hosting playoff games in the American Second Division of Professional Soccer in just over a decade. The DCFC match day experience is like no other, and the fans are some of the most dedicated in the country. And for more on this unique American soccer club, we are now joined by the longtime head of communications photographer for Detroit City FC's supporter group, the Northern Guard, Dion DeGennaro. Welcome to Morning Kick Around.
Yeah, hey guys, how's it going? Thanks for having me on. Excited to talk about this. Spent a lot of my 20s deeply involved in this, so excited to chat about it a bit.
It's good to have you, Dion. I am no longer an active Twitter presence, X, whatever we're calling it now, but certainly know Dion from his social media exploits.
Oh man,
Very excited to talk to you.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Well, DCFC's impact has been so big, both locally and across the region. There's definitely like kind of a before and after DCFC, especially locally in Detroit. So kind of what was your Detroit soccer experience like before and then after the discovery of your club that you're dedicated to?
Yeah, so I grew up in Metro Detroit my whole life. Played youth soccer a little bit, but it never did, travel, never played too deep. I got more into soccer in the 06 World Cup. Italy winning was huge for me. Got me into the sport a lot more than I ever had been. So then I started kind of watching Champions League, and then 2010 I went to a pub to a Motor City Supporters World Cup watch party, and that was like the first thing I had ever seen locally of like organized soccer activities, and it was part of that watch party where I found out that there might be a team starting in Detroit, and there was a couple guys talking about it. They might have played at Wayne State, which is a university in Detroit. There was all these rumors swirling, and eventually that coalesced into what became DCFC, and bought season tickets. That was actually the kind of the first local thing that I ever remember hearing about, other than the rec leagues, the indoor teams, the ethnic leagues that honestly still to this day are pretty strong in the area too. But the first organized team that I had heard of in the area was really DCFC. I went to a couple of Rockers games as a kid, but nothing that really got me excited in the way that DCFC did when they were announced in late 2011, early 2012.
Yeah, Dion, the sort of vacuum that existed in Detroit made this phenomenon happen. And as somebody who was very far away from Detroit and sort of watching this, and particularly from a media guy perspective, it's sort of fascinating to watch the culture around the team grow. I mean, how quickly did all of that happen? I mean, obviously we know you had a role in that, but this is the thing people know about Detroit City. They know about the fans. They know about the environment there. Even obviously with the move to Hamtramck, but that all starts pretty early for Detroit City.
Honestly, it was game one. The first game they ever played, I mean, and you're talking NPSL, fourth division, vast majority of teams are drawing dozens of fans at that time. There were a handful of standouts drawing hundreds, maybe thousands at that time. There were a couple staples in that league, but first game of DCFC's history, there were over 1,000 people there, and there was also smoke bombs. There was a culture being developed in that very first game, and I think it was, a lot of it was due to that vacuum you mentioned, where there was a demand for this product or this kind of culture to exist in the area. Sorry, there was a demand for that culture to exist in the area, but there was no outlet for it to happen. And so it was really DCFC that, a phrase that was used a lot in the early years was catching lightning in a bottle, where it was just the right amount of factors coming together. There was people that wanted a soccer team, that wanted to express themselves via the culture of supporting a soccer team. And it wasn't until DCFC came around where that was able to happen. So honestly, it was the first game. There were drums there. I mean, even the tryouts of the team before they even kicked a ball off, there was fans there chanting, drumming, setting an atmosphere for the tryouts before they even kicked a ball. So that culture was there to begin with, and it was very much grassroots. It had nothing to do with the owners of trying to start the team. It was just people trying to express themselves in soccer culture, and DCFC was the vehicle that allowed them to do that even before day one.
Yeah, we're seeing an image on screen now. You labeled it pre-sellout. So this is probably the only picture of a DCFC game I've seen without completely full stands. This is from the first home of Detroit City FC, Cass Tech High School, right by downtown. So how many games did it look like this before the packed houses?
Yeah, I want to say this photo was from 2015. Maybe 2014, actually. But I would say that it became clear around the 2015 season that we really started selling out matches. So that would have been three seasons in where matches started to getting sold out. And of course, these are my photos. There's a historic photo in DCFC lore at Cass Tech, at that stadium that you guys are seeing, where we kind of had our first sellout, and there were people standing on parking barriers to see over the fence line. And it was a photo of people standing outside of the stadium looking in to be able to watch the game because they didn't know it was going to be a sellout. So 2015 is really when this thing started to take off. And that's when I think ownership realized that we had kind of outgrown this 2,500, 3,000 seat stadium at Cass Tech. So what you're seeing in this next photo right here is, kind of the end of the NPSL era. This is an away day. This is at a high school field in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And that's the traveling support you're seeing on an away day for the NPSL.
Yeah, Dion, let me ask you. I mean, these are great pictures, and they do a good job, I think, of what you're talking about, the growth of the club and the way the fans became attached to it. I've obviously had a chance to go in the NPSL era. I was able to go up to Detroit. And,
I remember when you came down. Yeah,
taking a game and do the march to the stadium, and it was incredible. I mean, it felt obviously at the time, for those people, it did not matter that these were amateurs, that these were basically college kids playing. What mattered is that they were Detroit, that this was representing them, and this expression of obviously soccer passion, but there's a lot more. It's a little more complicated than just soccer passion. And of course, if you're a Detroiter, and I'm not, a story of city rebirth is also mixed in with all of this, which I think is fascinating if you want to go beyond soccer. But what I wanted to ask you is, talking to the owners, talking to the guys that started this, was there ever a sense that this was completely shocking to them? Did you think that they kind of felt like they could do this? I mean, you start something, you dream big, and then I don't know that you would have dreamt this if you were those five guys.
I agree. I think that every year was kind of a surprise, actually. I know heading into that first off season through my conversations with ownerships as well, is they were talking like, hey, like, do you think we're going to have a team? You know, like, are we going to keep doing this each year? And it was really, I think, the fact that it did grow every year, that it gave them the drive to keep building this thing. I don't think, going on 13, well, I think we're going into like the 14th, 15th season now. I don't think that if you would talk to the owners or even the fans, uh, 8 seasons ago, that building a stadium was like something we would joke about. Like, it was like, the pie in the sky goal that, like, yeah, grandkids one day are going to support this team. We're going to have a stadium. We're going to survive all of these market pressures that make it really difficult for an NPSL team to grow. We joked about it in a lot of ways. It was like, okay, well, maybe we'll see you next year. But then every year it kept getting bigger, and season tickets would go on sale, and they would sell out earlier and earlier and earlier. And so it was really, yeah, I don't think that this was the original plan. I think it was just a couple guys saw a need for a team in the city, and then it became a commercial success, and then it allowed them to kind of build it into what it became today. Like, it was not definitely set out to be, a perennial contender in the second division of the United States. It was a couple guys saying like, oh, we like soccer and there's no team here, and let's build it. Yeah.
So, groundbreaking team, Detroit City FC have gone from the NPSL, one of the leading amateur leagues, then to NISA, and now to the USL Championship in the second division of professional soccer here in the States. How was DCFC able to navigate all this when very few American clubs have been able to rise in this kind of manner?
I think it's a lot of different factors. I think having a fan base support the team is really crucial to success. Gave the ownership a lot of resources to take risks that other teams maybe didn't have the ability to take, because they had the season tickets, they had revenue coming in that could allow them to take these risks. They tried to start a professional league in NPSL Pro, right? Like, no other teams were doing that. And if you didn't have a fan base that could support the business of running a team, how are you able to even consider doing something like that? Right. So I think that having a built-in fan base to support the team was really crucial. And then, honestly, the tool set that the owners had at the time, they came from a wide variety of backgrounds, where they knew how to build out what is basically a small business, and then take those things and put it towards league. So you had NPSL Pro, you had NISA. I mean, we kind of skipped over that in the conversation too, but NISA was entrepreneurs trying to create something from nothing, and with mixed success, of course, right? But it was really having a fan base, and then having an ownership driven to keep growing and keep doing these things, and making difficult decisions, but honestly the right ones at the time, that allowed them to do this. Like, making the jump to NISA was a risk, but it was a necessary risk.
Well, I want to ask you about the relationship between the fan base and those changes that have come to the club, Dean. I mean, this is sort of what I think, if you are very online and very tuned in as an American soccer fan, and you know about Detroit City, you know that there is an antagonistic relationship between some of the fan base and the idea of sort of, well, professional soccer. Obviously, MLS is a target. I mean, one of your pictures, there is somebody prominently wearing a slogan on their shirt. Yes. That I think Detroit City fans are famous for. So can you talk about that relation? There it is. There's that picture. That relationship between the fan base and sort of the growth, the corporatization of Detroit City FC.
Yeah, that is a fundamental topic to talk about when talking about DCFC and the changes over time. Fan bases change. Fan bases change all the time. It definitely, I mean, even what you guys started out the segment with, it started out as like a DIY cult following, and that's going to breed a specific type of mentality. And like, full disclosure, that's a big part of what attracted me to DCFC too, is that it was this grassroots effort, and it was organic, and it was fans having a lot of say and a lot of, getting their hands dirty, involved in the growth of the team. As it grew, that fan base and the dynamic and the relationship within the greater picture of the soccer landscape in the United States changes. So you talk to the fan base of DCFC today, and the opinions you're going to hear today being in the USL is going to be a lot different than the opinions of the fan base when we were trying to create NPSL Pro, right? Like, that was something where we wanted to create our own pro league. We didn't like the options available to us because we were worried about having our autonomy as supporters. Being told when we could do certain things in the stands was a non-starter for us at the time. But as it became more commercially successful, it attracted a different type of fan to the team, and that's okay. Like, that's normal, that's growth, and you're appealing to a wider audience. So it changes. There's a flow of like, I got away from Northern Guard as we entered into the USL because I could see that a lot of the things that attracted me to the team and getting my hands dirty and getting more involved in it were not there anymore. I'm still a huge fan of the team. I watch every game, but I'm not putting as much effort into it. And I think a lot of fans that did in those early days who were more counterculture and who were against MLS and the idea of the corporatization of soccer, a lot of those fans have pulled back in how much they give to the team. And that's okay. The team is still successful because it's attracted this next generation of fans that can still support it.
I was lucky enough to move back to the Detroit area during the NPSL days still, and there was between 8 and 12 games per season at home at Keyworth, and the amount of energy, and it was almost like a carnival / performance art nature to the supporter section. Like,
don't tell people that. Yeah,
it was a whole, it was a whole energy and dedication that, I've gone to a lot of soccer games in many different locations across the country, and that was the most energy I had seen put into a supporter section firsthand. Is that level of energy? How was that transition for? I know you said that you kind of withdrawn a little bit, but overall, the folks that are still with it, are they able to apply that same amount of energy to those games now that there's close to 40 games a season?
I think to be honest, I think you have to expend more energy now because of, like what you said, it's an incredibly long season. And even beyond that, something that hasn't really been talked about, but there's a whole women's side to the team now too, that didn't exist in those NPSL days. Frankly, it was really easy for us to expend that energy into a 12 game season where we could make the environment there extra crazy because there was far fewer to do. But I think overall the level of energy required to support DCFC and to make it to as many games as possible is higher now than what it was before. But I think what people see is that it gets expressed in a little bit of a different way. Like, it's not going to be this explosive energy, but compare us to any other team in USL, there's still way more energy in our stands in Detroit than any other team in the USL. So, despite the fact that the highest highs might be a little bit lower, it has to be spread out across a much wider field, as you mentioned, 40 games. And so, I think it actually takes more energy now. It's just expressed in a different way.
Actually, one more question, Dion. I mean, we could do this all day. I'm not going to take up your entire day.
Yeah.
With all this, obviously, we've talked about where the club has come from and where it is now. I guess I'm curious. Like, does this feel like DCFC is established? This is what it is. This is what it will be. Obviously, that's sort of league dependent, so it needs the USL to continue to grow and thrive, or at least exist. Or is there another level? I mean, obviously, that's on the owners to navigate that. but they are very responsive to the fan base. You're talking about a changing fan base. What do you envision for the future of DCFC?
I think what has allowed DCFC to be successful is their ability to take it one step at a time. And so I think that the next level, as it currently stands, is MLS. In order for them to get to that level, it is going to fundamentally change the DCFC that we've known for the last, what is it, 14 years, 12 years, 13 years, something like that. And so I think that if we ever come to that path, we'll know it at the time. I think that the focus right now is existing and continuing to exist, and that is why their main focus has been this stadium project. I think it's really interesting the size of the stadium that they're building and what they've planned for. They're planning to build a 14,000 seater. PLS requirements for MLS require a minimum of 15,000 seats. So if you're looking at the intentions of the ownership as it currently stands, they're not really considering MLS. That's not to say they won't in the future, but their next step is to just get this stadium going so they can continue to cement themselves in this market. What that means down the road, is it going to be expandable? Of course it's going to be expandable if that opportunity of outside investment ever arrives for them and the price is right for the existing owners. That could be in the picture down the road, but I really don't think that they're even thinking about that kind of stuff right now. I think they're really more concerned about getting that stadium and establishing themselves in the Detroit market as Detroit soccer team. And we talked about counterculture early days. At the end of the day, even though I was against MLS and I even didn't really want us to join USL, at the end of the day, I wanted my team to continue to exist. And that was my objective with all of the energy that I put into it and my partner put into it. The woman in the photo with the fuck MLS shirt, that's actually my partner.
Okay.
So we, at the end of the day, we both wanted our team to just continue to exist. And that was our main reason for putting in the energy. So wherever that path took us, it is what it is, but we wanted our team. And so I think that's what our focus was. And at the time, we can look back and I think we took the right path because we're still here. Right.
Yep.
So that's how I feel about it personally.
DCFC have come a long way, one step at a time, and then definitely a lot more to come with the new stadium plans ahead. Dion DeJaneiro, thank you so much for helping us get to know our district of Detroit. Any new viewers tuning in, be sure to hit the subscribe button here on Morning Kick Around as we shine a light on the world's favorite game here in everyone's favorite country. Dion, thank you for joining us here on Morning Kick Around.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Love what you guys are doing. Keep it up. Love it.
Thank you, Dion.
All right, We're going to catch our breath, come right back with today's big question here on Morning Kick Around. Whew, just about caught my breath there. Coming back in, final segment of the day here on Wednesday. The big question, how are American soccer coaches faring? And we'll start off with how are American coaches faring, Jason?
How are they faring? That's a big question. Oh, wait, that's what this is called, right? That's what we're doing. Okay, let's take a look at this list of American coaches currently in Major League Soccer. Just grab this from the old Wikipedia there, Robert. So thank you to Wikipedia for putting
the
this in
the expert site
in a nice spreadsheet format for us here. Valentino, interim coach, not going to be long for Atlanta United. Is it possible they hire an American coach? Yeah, I guess it's possible. I don't know the odds on it right now. Frank Klopas, he's out. It's Greg Berhalter, so Wikipedia needs to update this list. I guess this is for the season. But we know Greg Berhalter, American coach, with a mixed bag of a reputation. And I think what we can say, because we'll look at this list kind of in terms of prospects, because when we talk about how American coaches are faring, my mind immediately goes to, will we ever get an American coach at the highest levels of the game? Meaning Champions League, possibly even a contender level in the Champions League. Is that possible, or is that too big of a dream? Berhalter now, with the decision to take the job in Chicago, and I don't know if he had any other prospects, is pretty much locked in as an MLS lifer. Like, I feel like we're not going to see Greg Berhalter like win something in Chicago and then traipse off to Europe. I just feel like he's probably locked in Major League Soccer. Pat Noonan, good start to his career in Cincinnati. Does he have a possibility outside this country? We'll come to that. Chris Armas, okay. Troy Lesage, young coach, didn't get DC into the playoffs, unfortunately, this year. Hopefully he gets another crack at it next season. Lots to be determined in his career. Ben Olsen, MLS lifer. Greg Vanney, maybe there was a chance at one point, feels like an MLS lifer situation. Steve Cherundolo. Now, that one's interesting. We'll put a pin in Steve Cherundolo and come back to it. BJ Callahan just starting in Nashville. Caleb Porter, MLS lifer, probably going to get canned by the Revolution after this season. Jim Curtin, maybe some possibilities there, but it's kind of hard to know what they might be. Mastroeni's not going anywhere. In San Jose, where they're looking at coaches, they haven't hired anybody yet. They could be getting Bruce Arena. We know about Bruce Arena. Brian Schmetzer, Seattle lifer, not MLS lifer, Seattle lifer. Brian Schmetzer. Peter Ramiz, clock may be ticking on him in Kansas City anyway. Don't think he's going outside the country and taking a job anywhere. And then John Hackworth in St. Louis for the moment. They're going to go find somebody else. They haven't hired anybody, right? I haven't missed that, right? St. Louis City hasn't hired anybody new. Robert, are you up on your news there?
I am not specifically up on that, but I have been scanning the news, and I haven't seen anything related to St. Louis recently. I think we probably let's ask the chat if they could fact check us on the St. Louis coaching storyline.
Yeah, I don't think they have somebody yet. Of course, Bradley Carnell is South African, so they hired. Their first hire was not American. He had been in MLS, obviously, but not American. They've got in Lutz Pfannenstiel, a German guy running the club with connections in Europe. It's very possible they look towards Europe for their next manager. So we'll see. This isn't everybody, right? There are assistants, there are USL coaches, there are American coaches in Europe right now, right? There are a couple of American coaches still bouncing around various European leagues. Pellegrino Matarazzo comes to mind, right? But I don't think any of them feel like they have the potential to break that glass ceiling that Jesse Marsch tried so hard to break through, only to find himself coaching the Canadian national team.
Oh man, I was rooting for old Jesse. I really thought that. I mean, he had one signature win where Jesse's name was sung from the rafters at Leeds Stadium, but that goodwill and good results didn't last for very long, did it?
All right, so the only name on this list, and I put a pin in him, is Steve Cherundolo, right? Because Steve Cherundolo has this very strong German background from his time at Hanover, incredibly beloved player, got all his badges in Germany, made the move to America because I think he realized he needed to get started as a top guy, as a manager, as a head coach, not as an assistant anymore. And there was nobody willing to take the risk on him. Whether it's because he's American or just because he was young and untested, I don't know. I mean, Germany has they have a habit of elevating coaches they think are sort of astute and ahead of their time. Julian Nagelsmann is still like 12 years old. They have that capacity, but they didn't do it for Steve. He goes to Vegas, which was like his soft introduction. Then he takes over for Bob. Obviously, he's won a title. He's done very well at LAFC. I think it's probably fair to say that Steve Cherundolo's goal is to get back to Germany to be a manager in a club in the Bundesliga or perhaps the second Bundesliga, Robert. But right now it's not there. Right now it's not happening.
Looking at that list, is there of American coaches in Major League Soccer, is there a theme of kind of what a lot of those guys have in common? Kind of just speculatively, a lot of those coaches are former players that kind of had their heyday in the 90s sort of an era, right? Like, is there many names on that list that were, would you say are like coaching phenoms that weren't necessarily players that maybe got into the coaching certification programs based on their relationships and experiences within the American game as a player?
I mean, the only so if we bring it back up, I know we took it down, but this is the nature of our live show. Sometimes we got to return our Oh, sorry, that's my fault. I clicked a button I shouldn't have clicked. Leave that to other people. BJ Callahan is the name that jumps out here as a guy who didn't have a significant playing career that we could point to. I mean, Valentino, a pro, but not a notable one. Clank Plus played in the 90s. Pat Noonan, MLSer, decent career. Armis, same thing. Troy Lesane, not much of a pro career to speak of. Caleb Porter, too, got injured early in his career, never really. But there are some coaches who come through the ranks because they're good coaches or they are recognized as good coaches rather than as guys that, had to have a career to lean on. I mean, actually, the thing about MLS is that there aren't a lot of coaches that you go, oh, he was a great player. Right. He had a great playing career. It's always kind of this middling playing career or injuries limited what they could accomplish. Think Ben Olsen. Right. Ben Olsen had a pretty decent career. Injuries limited him. He wasn't able to catch on in Europe the way he wanted to because of that. So he's an example of the kind of profile that American coaches tend to have. And maybe that's a thing, right? If you're going to break through that ceiling, Robert, if you're going to go and catch on in a big club, or even get the opportunity to manage through the ranks of championship to Premier League, lower table, lower end of the Premier League, maybe Bundesliga, maybe Serie A. It's almost impossible to imagine American ever getting a job in Serie A.
Who's going to be the Pulisic of American coaching, right?
That's a good question. But if you're going to do that, you kind of have to have a cachet, right? And because we don't have players who have ever ranked among world greats, and maybe Pulisic's on that journey right now, but because we've never had those players, it makes it really hard to imagine them as coaches, our coaches doing that. So maybe that is the chicken has to come before the egg, and the chicken is somebody like Pulisic getting recognized as elite or world class. I know we've debated it on this show whether he's world class. Maybe that's what's necessary. It may not be Pulisic who breaks the glass ceiling, but maybe having players at that level will give everybody the sense, oh, Americans can do anything. They can also be top-level coaches. Because I don't know if I have a sense of the timeline on any of this, Robert. How long will you and I still be around the first time an American coaches in a Champions League semifinal, for example, or quarterfinal for that matter?
There's a lot fewer jobs, so there's a lot less opportunity for a manager than a player, obviously. But it seems hard to really put your thumb on it. Like you said, Jesse Marsch, he had a couple moments at Salzburg where he graced the Champions League stage and had some highlights. And then we can't forget, not in Champions League, but Matarazzo at Hoffenheim, the one American really leading the way in Europe. But my final question to you, Jason, is of that list of American coaches plying their trade domestically, which one would you like to have?
Well, let me refine my statements, right, about the playing career matching up with the coaching career, right? Okay. Because it is right now in the chat, we got Nate. Other than Pep, what top coaches have had great careers? I think Diego Simeone had a very good career. I don't know about great. Put him on great. Mourinho obviously didn't. Famously, I've already mentioned Nagelsmann, who is, I think, as German head coach right now, maybe not where he wants to be exactly, but didn't have much of a playing career. Jurgen Klopp was a middling player, lower levels of German football for part of his career. I get it, right? That most of the coaches that we celebrate aren't guys who were like famous players. But I think what I'm saying is that, again, in that chicken and the egg analogy, American soccer as a whole is still pretty looked down upon worldwide at the top levels of the game. Now, again, players have proven they can do things, and clubs are, as you said, there are more opportunity. You cast your recruitment net, you cast your development net, and you go, okay, well, there's some Americans and they can play. And if we bring them over when they're 14 or 15, we can teach them European ways and they can be great players. And they're willing to do that. Or very good players. But maybe until we elevate the perception of American soccer completely with players achieving things, what Pulisic is doing, but more than just him, 3, 4, 5 guys, maybe until then, those people in charge of picking coaches are going to be less inclined to say an American can do it. It's a tough sell to your supporter base, right? For most of those European clubs, it's tough to go, hey, we're going to give an American. Americans don't know shit about football, is most people's mindset in Europe.
Yeah, so, Nate's saying MLS would maybe have to become a top league to see American coaches get more chances.
That's possible. But again, how do you see that happening? Because MLS doesn't have access to the competition that most turns managers into stars, and that's the Champions League. Because MLS doesn't have access to that competition, no matter what kind of talent level we have here, no matter how strong the competition seems on paper, people will always say, yes, but that's not the Champions League. They're not winning the Champions League.
The realities of what you're saying aside, as we finish up this topic, of the list of American coaches stateside, which one would you like to see given the opportunity, regardless of the realities of you just laid out of how difficult that would be and to accept over there?
All right, let me see the list again.
Which one of these players that are coaches domestically would you like to see given a shot?
Ay, man, who deserves it? Let's see. I like Pat Noonan. Not sure I'm thinking he's ready for it right now. Let's see. I don't think Vanny's got the level necessary. I guess it is Dolo only because, again, his pedigree as a player in Germany means he's not going to have to struggle to adapt. And it would probably have to be Germany. That would be, again, sort of the runway, the soft entry for an American coach at a decent level. So Steve Cherundolo, in terms of this list, is really the only guy where you go, yeah, he could not only adapt culturally, but he could succeed in a league because he knows it so well. Everybody else here, it would be a difficult introduction. And after what we witnessed with Jesse Marsch at Leeds and what we witnessed with Bob Bradley at Cardiff City, and those are
Swansea.
English environments. No, Swansea, you're right. Sorry, I got the wrong Welsh club. Those are English league environments. Obviously, the Welsh teams playing in the English system. So that's a different kind of media scrutiny than I think even an American would get in Germany. I think that language barrier might help a little bit, actually, in a perverse way.
That's funny.
Yeah. I mean, the relationship between us and the English when it comes to this game is extremely complicated, and it made it tough on Jesse, and it certainly made it tough on Bob. So I think it would have to be something like that. I don't see it. I don't see it right now. Again, except for maybe Steve Cherundolo, one more great year in LA or two more great years in LA. I don't see it here.
We shall see. And that just about does it for today's show. And I got to remind you, hit the subscribe button on the Morning Kick Around YouTube channel. We are, ticking up the numbers, and only you can help us do more. Like and subscribe, Morning Kick Around on YouTube, and then we can be followed on social media, MKickaround on X and the Instagram, or write us an email, morningkickaround@gmail.com. Thank you for everyone tuning in, sharing their comments. Thanks to Dion for helping us get to know the District of Detroit. That was a fun interview. And until Friday, enjoy your soccer.